I've been loving watching these sessions. I haven't always been able to get there in person, but I've really loved watching the recordings of them. And this is the 6th week. This is the culmination of all of your listening and probably thinking of 6 weeks, thinking about Bach suites. And I'm wondering if there are questions or topics that have come to you over these 6 weeks that you maybe have coalesced around a question or something that you want to talk about. I have very few answers, probably mostly questions, but there's a lot of consideration I've done about Bach ever since Lolly suggested doing this in a way that I had forgotten, you know? I was saying to Lolly that a lot of what we do actively is, well, I was especially aware of this because of playing so much contemporary music a couple of weekends ago, that I was embroiled in that project, just trying to come to terms with everything that I had to do. My cello, unfortunately, was also trying to come to terms with everything that I had to do. And we tend to go from, we have to go from project demand to next project demand. But what I realized these last couple of weeks is that Bach should be there all the time. It really should be there all the time, because we change. If I pull out, you know, I was saying to Lolly, my students working on any one of the suites will say, well, do you have a set of bowings? And I will say, yes, I have a set of bowings, but I don't know if they're the bowings today. They're the bowings that I did, you know, a couple of years ago. Maybe today there's something else. And I will say that I may have made the error in judgment to read a lot of the most recent stuff about the Bach suites, which is to say, they brought a whole bunch of bowings to the fore. I don't know if you know The Fencing Master, the Anna Bilsma book about...
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's fascinating because he's claiming that Anna Magdalena Bach's bowings should be adhered to if at all possible. That's really an incredible distillation of a book. That's really not fair to say, but as a player, that's kind of what you take from it. And so I thought, you know, I should try doing some of that.
Yeah.
I should try doing some of that. And so that's informed a lot of what this particular version will be. It makes it tricky, I have to say. There's a lot of symmetry in most editions of Bach. By that I mean, if you see a motivic pattern that repeats, you play the same bowing. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that if you have a motivic pattern that repeats, and certainly, for example, in this piece, motives play in a tremendous
Sequences
in the prelude for sure, and in the other movements, motives are worked incredibly intricately and deeply, and turned on their heads, and all kinds of wonderful things. And so his idea was, well, you know, we don't have to make this all. Bilsma was, they're not symmetrical in that autograph. Why should they be symmetrical in our playing? So I give some of that a try. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing I think that I've felt a little bit more than I ever felt before is that there is some rustic quality sometimes in this music. You know? When you, not in the prelude as much, but when you go, where does that come from? You know? It's not something that's elegant and you know, there's something about these drones that has a certain humor, a certain rusticity to that I never thought of before. You know, I always approach these things very carefully, you know, elegantly, if you want to say that.
Right. There's a lot of burlesque and
humor and yeah, exactly. So.
And folk music, you know.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I should talk about the prelude briefly and then try and play it.
Sure.
I think the thing that is The prelude lays out, I think, very clearly for a listener in terms of its sections. Perhaps, and the sequences are incredibly beautiful and very evocative. I think this piece, as compared to maybe all of the other five, is the most maybe extroverted of them in some ways.
C major, right?
Yeah, because of that open string and because of the joy in it, you know. It has all of this just positivity about it in so much of the piece. One thing that I think is quite unusual, and I'm not the first person to point it out, is that you hear things in this piece that will remind you somewhat of moments in the first suite, which is to say the big pedal, you know, that the big sort of improvisation, if you will, or riffing on the dominant, right? But as most cadenzas that we know of in concertos are, the dominant chord comes, the soloist plays, and then the piece ends. And in this one, the big riff on the dominant does not end the piece at all.
Right, right.
We have this huge thing with G, 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 and then there's a lot more to go, which is very unusual, I think.
A topic that we may not want to get more deeply into, but one of the things that absolutely fascinates me about these suites is Bach's use of codas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how they can be a bar long or, you know, a third of a page.
Right.
It's so remarkable how they use the ending.
Right, right. And instead of finishing after all this G and saying, okay, we're done, we're gonna finish in C and put a few bars in there and there we are, it goes on and on. Much more happens.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the prelude?
Okay.